Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Healing Outside the Box. What we have here is episode 256, and this is part 2 of my 2-part episode on broccoli sprouts and autism. Now, last week I gave you the scientific evidence that broccoli and broccoli sprouts in particular fight oxidative damage that we now know can cause autism. At the end of part 1, I asked myself, if broccoli and other cruciferous vegetables can help fight cancer and now maybe autism, why doesn't everyone know about this? And how can I put more of this stuff in my diet? Well, let's take that last question first. But before that, a little disclaimer here. It's generally safe to include broccoli sprouts in your diet. After all, it's a food. They can be eaten raw or cooked. But talk to your healthcare providers before taking them as supplements. Supplements are stronger than the sprouts that you would add to your food. And synthetic sulforaphane probably won't work, as I mentioned in part 1. Okay, sulforaphane is a very strong antioxidant, but it's also called a phytochemical or a phytonutrient. So what is a phytochemical? It's an organic chemical made by plants that is used to defend the plants against attack by pathogens or predators. Now, these pathogens can be bacteria, viruses, yeast, or mold, and predators can be insects. So these phytochemicals have a benefit that goes beyond just producing protein, carbohydrate, and fat for us. And broccoli sprouts are generally used for these studies because they are a concentrated source of this particular phytochemical. Okay, so now we know what they are. But what can phytochemicals do for us? Well, quite a bit as it turns out. Number 1, they have been shown to block the initial stages of cancer growth by inhibiting enzymes known to activate cancer cells to grow quickly and out of control. Cancer cells growing out of control can be called cell proliferation. Phytochemicals like sulforaphane also trigger enzymes that metabolize cancer-causing agents to make them available for excretion. In an animal study done recently, sulforaphane was able to theoretically suppress a pathway that leads to the formation of breast cancer cells. That work was done at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and I'll put that link in the show notes for you. Number 2, phytochemicals neutralize toxins. Phytochemicals like sulforaphane are antioxidants that cancel out free radicals. And these free radicals can cause DNA damage that can lead to both rapid aging and some cancers, as I've mentioned. Number 3, phytochemicals reduce inflammation, and that by itself is a good thing. Because sulforaphane neutralizes toxins, it also calms inflammation in your body that is triggered by these invading toxins. Roundup in our food is one such toxin. Inflammation itself can lead to many chronic diseases, including plaque on our arteries, which can cause cardiovascular disease. Inflammation can also worsen obesity-related chronic disease, and it might be tied to some skin conditions. Number 4, some phytochemicals naturally reject pathogenic viruses or bacteria. This is a quote from the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Quote, in a small human study, broccoli sprout homogenates enhanced antiviral defense responses via peripheral blood NK cell activation and increased granzyme B production. End quote. Don't worry about that last part of the sentence. The key takeaway is that broccoli sprouts were shown to enhance defenses against pathogenic viruses. Again, I'll give you a link to that article in the show notes if you want to read the whole thing. Number 5. Broccoli sprouts and similar cruciferous vegetables are readily available. Which brings me back to my first question, which is, why doesn't everyone know about this? Well, right now, it doesn't seem like a lot of money can be made by the pharmaceutical industry. And that is because, as I've mentioned, synthetic sulforaphane right now doesn't seem to work. And natural organic broccoli and broccoli sprouts are inexpensive. But that's okay, because we can purchase these cruciferous vegetables and the sprouts as well in grocery stores and online. So the next question is, what do we do with these broccoli sprouts? The answer to that question basically is that you can put broccoli sprouts in whatever the person with autism is eating, with perhaps a few exceptions. Kids with autism often like to eat the same food every day, and there's generally a bunch of foods that autistic kids simply will not eat. So go with whatever their preferences are and just stick them in there. One of the first foods that adults will generally recommend for other adults is that the sprouts can go on salads or in dips or hummus or blended soups. But autistic kids usually won't eat salads or dips. And if they're eating sandwiches, they may not like the sprouts added whole into the sandwich so they can be seen sticking out everywhere. So my recommendation is to first find the foods that are preferable to the person with autism and add them crushed up to those foods. Autistic kids often will eat hot foods like soups and sometimes casseroles. Broccoli sprouts can be chopped up or minced in a blender and added to hot foods, but I would recommend adding the sprouts towards the end of the cooking to minimize some of the nutrients lost with cooking, such as vitamin C. Broccoli sprouts can also be crushed and added to spaghetti sauce. And if their preferences include something like Chinese stir fry, broccoli sprouts can easily be cut up and added to that. For adults who want to eat sprouts simply for their health benefits, you can put it almost anywhere. Salads, sandwiches, soups, casseroles, stir fries, toppings on tostadas or avocado toast, in smoothies. Last night I made a broccoli stuffed red potato for dinner because it was really easy and I was busy working on this. I sliced a red potato, skin on, baked it open side up until it was about 10 minutes from being totally done. Then I topped it with broccoli florets and a healthy handful of chopped up broccoli sprouts. Then I topped all of that with mozzarella cheese and baked it for another 10 minutes. Now those were purchased broccoli sprouts that I've mentioned, but I've also just purchased broccoli seeds for sprouting. I got them from Amazon, but you can get them anywhere. Now I'm not getting paid to say this, but the brand I purchased was from a family-run business called Cool Beans and Sprouts. They are non-GMO seeds and will grow sprouts in 4 to 5 days. Handy Pantry is another brand that people seem to like, and that's also on Amazon. Plan on sprouting them in a few days and I will let you know how it goes. I also plan to come up with some recipes for the sprouts, and I'll post the recipes that work out well. Now, what amount of broccoli sprouts per day did the trick in terms of improvement in symptoms? In the journal articles I read, 1 tablespoon for children and 2 tablespoons for adults, and again that's broccoli sprouts, should be plenty. Now the next question. How do you grow broccoli sprouts? And for most of you, where can you buy them at the store? From what I can gather by looking around, people generally prefer to grow broccoli sprouts in mason jars for 5 days. You can get the mason jars anywhere, but you will also need the screen lids that you can also purchase on Amazon. That is because if you grow them in mason jars using the filtered water they tell you to use, you will need to be rinsing and draining every day. Now, I am about to grow broccoli sprouts for the first time, so if you'd like to grow your own, just pick a YouTube video and follow their directions. There are several people posting directions on YouTube. Now, if you just groaned and rolled your eyes at the thought of sprouting your own broccoli seeds, you can just buy them in any supermarket. Whether you grow them on your own or buy them at the store, there are a few tips I want to share about keeping them fresh. Because bottom line, if they start to get a little slimy or start to smell bad, you need to throw them out. Fresh from the store, the sprouts should last about 4 to 5 days. When you get them home, you can separate them and freeze some of it, but I would wrap them in a paper towel and make sure if you rinse them that you dab them dry. And in the freezer, they should be good for another 5 days, depending on your source. Now, you don't want to boil them before you freeze them, because that will destroy the enzyme that you need to make that active sulforaphane. If you are storing them in the refrigerator, you might want to use a glass leftover container with a dry paper towel on the bottom. By keeping them dry, relatively, we are trying to prevent mold from growing on the sprouts. How do you know when your sprouts have gone bad? Well, smell them. If they just have a mild smell, maybe smelling a little bit like your typical sulfur in a vegetable, that would be okay. But if they reek, you need to throw the whole thing out. Sprouts should be clean looking, crunchy, and certainly have no mold. Again, if they're slimy or moldy, you need to throw them all out. And along those same lines, I would avoid salad bar broccoli sprouts, especially if you're not completely trusting of their freshness. Okay, for the preparation. Chopping them fine, blending them, or pureeing them first can make the sulforaphane more available. And here's why. The precursor to sulforaphane needs to mix with the enzyme that makes it active. And this happens when you chop it up or chew it really well. If you're making a blended soup like broccoli and cheddar soup, you will have better luck making active sulforaphane if you chop up or blend the broccoli and sprouts before you cook them. Boiling the broccoli sprouts before blending may kill the enzyme. So cooking the broccoli in broccoli sprouts is fine if you chop it up or pulverize it and let it sit while you chop the other vegetables. Do not use frozen broccoli because it's boiled first to destroy the enzymes. And in this case, you want that enzyme to make your active sulforaphane. And again, 1 to 2 tablespoons or 1 to 2 ounces of fresh sprouts per day is plenty. As I've mentioned, I will make up some recipes with my homegrown sprouts and post them on my website if they work out well. My website is, not surprisingly, healingoutsidethebox.com, and I've got a recipe page on the website. And FYI, I am as fussy as my cat Betty when it comes to trying new food. So if it's okay for me, it should be okay for other Ashburgery people. That's all I have for you today. Be well and stay tuned next week for another episode of Healing Outside the Box.